Hi, I'm Chet Gladkowski with GAPro. There was an article that appeared in the New York Times last week, and let me just pull out a few little quotes. The idea is surprising, but makes sense. It's interesting and provocative. It's obviously outside the box. And when I think of those topics, I think about disruption. I thought this is an ideal way to introduce you to what we're doing at GAPro, and I want to share with you lessons learned about what we have discovered going through the process of raising capital, of building a proof of concept, of delivering a live product, and going to market. First thing is that insurance is, the technical term is ripping big. So, it's just huge as far as the opportunities. And the problem that we're trying to solve, we're very focused on, is this idea of proof of insurance through certificates, and then also what the certificate could do if it grew up, which is provide data to do compliance verification. And what the problem that we saw is this vortex of emails and faxes and calls, and nothing is coordinated. Every time I talk to somebody about this, they say, yeah, I was buying a car and I couldn't do this, and I'm trying to buy a house, and it's lots of pain. So we hear these stories, and when we came to our solution, everybody says, well, of course that makes sense. So it's good to get that kind of feedback, but we're also getting a lot of, now wait a minute kind of thing. What is this actually going to do to deliver this changing ecosystem? We did original presentations, and the immediate feedback was, well, you know what? We see lots of value. We see how this is really going to help. We talked to one broker, as exampled on this slide. They are spending $72 million a year. That is their number, not ours, to produce a piece of paper, which is like a stick match, a wooden match. Remember those? What happens? You light it. It glows brightly, and it burns down. And when it's out, what is the match good for? Nothing. And that's basically what a certificate of insurance is worth. It's worth as of the point in time it was created. Hopefully it wasn't produced through fraud. Hopefully it wasn't produced by someone who had no idea and said, oh, by the way, I need to get this job, so would you make it look like they won even though I don't have it, kind of a thing. So we see that there's this great need. And as the lessons learned as we talked about this was saying, well, could it do this? Could it do this? And one of the lessons learned was to say, we're going to put on blinders. We're really going to attack the problem in hand. There's lots of other ancillary uses which we'll save for the future. Our go-to-market strategy is say we have to find a place to do this, to try it out. So we went to, of all places, the professional liability E&O market. And everybody's saying, well, you should have done construction, you should have done workers' comp, you should have done trucking. Those are great opportunities, but I have to get to like 1,000, 1,500 insurance companies to make this work. E&O, basically, there are 10 carriers that write the predominance, like 95% plus of the business. So we can get, by attaching ourselves and partnering with a handful of companies, we can get great momentum to win that particular marketplace. Part of our other lessons learned is, I know I'm not supposed to say this, so can it be like Oprah? It's just between us. We went down the traditional path of building it ourselves. Trying to scale what we're doing was going to take too long. We then went to a partner who said, we have a platform, can do this. But they really could, in other words, a software company that said they could do something that they couldn't do. I was so surprised. Thirdly, we found a company called Knowledge Cube out of the UK, which really can scale horizontally and vertically. It already has a system in place that's in use in 158 countries with over 140 different data entry files coming in from all sorts of languages and currencies. So we had to know it was going to scale, and by placing it on the Microsoft cloud, we didn't have to go through the whole infrastructure and whatever. And basically for $50,000, we built a proof of concept. We now have a pilot going in, and we are at the cusp of our minimum viable product, or MVP. That sounds like a pretty good deal to me, to be able to develop and have a product to be able to live with. So it's not the usual path, but it was one that worked for us. One of the other lessons we learned is the fact that if we get this data, people would be interested in it. I thought, well, we'll get it, and it's only the 4 stakeholders. No, it really became apparent, if I've got policy data from a preponderance of insurance companies and put it in a white space, insurance companies are going to be interested in it, because today, the data they see is their data. What would happen if they could see their data in a white space compared to other marketplaces? What would a company be willing to pay to not only see the policies, but the risk profiles of the insureds and the third parties that define their insurance needs? There's a great opportunity there that we just didn't see in the beginning. The future of this verification, we've spoken to the Mortgage Bankers Association. There are, I mentioned, I think 2.8 million new home mortgages every year. There's, I forget how many millions of commercial buildings. Every one of those has a mortgage on it. Every one of them has a proof of insurance on an annual basis. And if I'm not telling tales out of school, the mortgage bankers cross their fingers, they light a candle, and say a prayer that the certificate actually is right, and they have no electronic way to see whether it marries to their actual needs. So having this information and being able to share it is something that we learned along the way. We didn't have this thing totally wired at the beginning, which leads to sort of the whole thing of you never know everything. You're always going to be growing. We're always going to be learning. I've been in the insurance technology arena since before many of you were born, 1972. There is not a day goes by that I don't learn something about technology and insurance. So we are continuing to learn. I can't tell you how many times we built a prototype. No, that doesn't work. I remember I looked on the screen one day and I had this epiphany. And I said, holy crap. Can you say holy crap? Yeah. It doesn't do what I thought it was going to do. So I called up our development partner and I said, you know what? Oh, I forgot this. It's outside of scope change. And they said, well, the next morning I got up, they said, go look at it. It was there. Ability to change, to turn on a dime, the functionality. Another thing we learned is limiting numbers, trying to ratchet down. This was a question in the earlier 2-minute drill. Applications, 10 pages for professional liability. I don't know whether they need all that information. That's not my business. But to do coverage confirmation and compliance verification, I only need so much. Rifle in on what's important. Another important lesson learned is security. We know that I describe it this way. We've built polarized lenses, like the non-glare glasses that you have, that only lets certain light in and keeps other things out. We've created data polarized lenses, so each of the 4 stakeholders, the carrier only sees their data, the agent broker only sees their data, the insured only sees their data and can only talk to those people, and the third party only has certain information. And we've built actually sort of an accident is a social media kind of thing where insureds and third parties can invite one another. I'd like to end with a quote. Abraham Lincoln said, "It is not, can any of us imagine better, but can we all do better? Object whatsoever is possible, still the question recurs, can we do better? The dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. The occasion is piled high with difficulty. We must rise with the occasion. As our case is new, so we must think anew and act anew. We must disenthrall ourselves from our current solutions, and then we shall save our country.